Man, we have 2 months in the bank already for 2024. We talk a lot about training and just life optimization on the podcast, and we felt like it was time as we start the third month of the year. Very quickly, we're going to be getting into warmer weather, race seasons right around the corner. A lot of things happening. A lot of goals were set. If you go back 2 months, just think in your mind right now of the goals that you had set, maybe the things that you said to yourself that you were going to do, that you were going to accomplish. Maybe 2024 was going to be your year. And here we are, very beginning of March. And what we wanted to do was, while we had a guest in the podcast studio with us, we wanted to be able to talk a little bit and let Coach Katie Malone talk a little bit about maybe some of the things that she sees in her athletes, maybe from the past, maybe those that are currently under her coachmanship or whatever we would want to call it, but just maybe helping you kickstart, because I would say we're not too far. Usually people find themselves in a couple of different places. Maybe they started red hot in January, and then that just tapered off, and maybe you had a bad week, and that bad week has now turned into a bad few weeks, and you're just kind of back on the couch and not really performing. Some of you maybe you've been set back by injuries, whatever has happened. We wanted to give this opportunity to hopefully encourage and challenge and motivate you to get back on track, or maybe continue on the path that you're on towards reaching your goals. But Coach, we're in March. 2 months are gone already. 2024 flying by. What are you seeing? What are you seeing in your athletes? What are some of the maybe the problems, the issues, the challenges, the successes? Let's talk about how we keep everyone out there in our podcast family motivated, challenged, and encouraged.
Well, I think after having 2 months kind of being on your program, whatever that program might be for you, I think it's time to kind of take inventory and be really honest with yourself. Like, where are you? First, look at what you're doing well. Because surely there's something that you've done over the past 2 months that has been good for you, something that you've been doing really well. Maybe it's challenged you. Pat yourself on the back for that. Celebrate that, because it is important to celebrate your wins. Even if they're little wins, you got to celebrate. And I don't mean celebrate by going and eating junk food or something like that. I just mean give yourself a pat on the back, remind yourself that you're doing good. Now, look at the things that are missing, the pieces that are missing that you just have not been able to put in place. And when you do that, I think it's important to really dig deep. Like, why aren't you doing them? Are you overcommitted? Are you overreaching? Do you need help? I think a lot of times we're hesitant to ask for help. We're hesitant to, even if you just ask a friend to be your accountability partner, which makes a huge difference in just getting you to show up. Showing up. Are you showing up for yourself? Are you showing up for your friends? What do you show up for? Because if you don't show up, how can you get the work done? And I know, I've been leading these bike rides, these hill seeker rides, and really, honestly, they've just been some nice social rides in the mountains. Yeah, we've climbed some big mountains, some stuff that challenged people. But mainly the idea is just get out there and put the time in and get base miles on your legs. Quality, it doesn't matter how fast you're riding. It doesn't matter. You just got to get on the bike and get out there. And so when I look at my own training, I don't feel like I'm not necessarily on track with where I would like to be, but I also got sick. And so I'm like, okay, I got sick. I've had some stressful situations that, are totally outside of training that affect my training and my ability to train. But it's so I've got to be honest with myself. Am I doing some things well? Yeah. I've been managing to get up early and get workouts done. I've been leading my bike rides because I said I would. So I'm going to show up. Like when you commit to other people, you are so much more likely to show up. And there are a lot of groups or your friends even appreciate it. So, I always talk to Abby about this. Abby has been really good with her strength training. And strength training is something that is critical, especially in women who are over 35. So, like, I'm just going to ask Abby and she can tell us, even though I already know the answer to the question, like, what has made the biggest difference for you making strength training a priority, and how have you done it?
Great question. Biggest difference really would be less likelihood of injuries, stronger, faster, and truly, I think it's a matter of the discipline of taking the time to do it, using heavier weights. I think especially in the years as triathlon, I felt like what I was doing was enough without the strength training, and shame on me, I should know better as an athletic trainer and a former strength and conditioning coach, that, doing body weight, doing light weights, accompanied with the triathlon training was not enough. And I would challenge Katie. I think all athletes need to be doing heavier weight even before 35. It is vital. And if you want to get stronger and faster, that heavy lifting is going to make a difference, and focusing on those key big weights. So yes, squats, yes, deadlifts, are going to make that difference, in keeping that consistency too with your running and staying injury free. It is challenging to incorporate, and I think it's one thing that I loved when I joined Malone Coaching and Katie's team over 10 years ago, that two things I valued was she incorporated the strength training into our programs and takes that into account when you're doing your strength training, what your workout's going to look like, what your biking, your running, and your swimming is going to look like. It's important because it can mess with your system, your energy systems. I struggled trying to do it on my own. I always gained weight. I wasn't coordinating my sprints and my long distance with the right lifts, things like that. So having a coach that understands that and understands multi-sport. As an athletic trainer and a strength coach, it was easy to think, I got this, I can do this. But having a coach that's really looking at it from that perspective made a big difference for me. But I also, time, as you shared, you run out of time and you're trying to do multi-sports and get a bunch of, exercises into one day. And yoga and strength training always tends to be the two things you let fall just to make sure you get those runs in or get the long bike rides and swims in. And you've got to make time for all of it. It's crucial. And I think that's when I started to see injuries peak in and started to have some trouble and had to go back to the root of getting in that strength training.
Let's sit there for a minute, because you said something that often scares people. You said people need to be lifting, but then they need to be lifting heavy. And then you mentioned a couple of things like squats and deadlifts and those kind of exercises. Why are those? I think what I've seen from some people in the past, and especially people in endurance sports, is you will see them, and you will even see prescribed things like, well, do one leg presses with very, very light weight, and do super high reps, and stay away from the heavier. They tend to want to stay away from the heavier weights. Why is it important to lift? And we're not talking about you're not going to be a power lifter, but to use really good define when you say lifting heavy, define what that means, and then tell us why that's important.
Sure. So lifting heavy is typically you're looking at 75% or more of your body weight. And so you're using that metric to lift heavy. And when you're running, we don't need to call out anybody's weight on this podcast, but, we're all over 100 pounds. And so you're out there running and you have, in your run stride alone, you have one leg bearing your body's weight in that process. And so when you're just lifting a 30-pound kettlebell and doing squats or doing deadlifts, that is not what your body's having to endure over miles of training, especially if you're looking at an Ironman distance race. So that, first and foremost, the heavier weight is really training your body and keeping up that strength for all the other intrinsic muscles that are taking into account the single leg activities we're doing. Katie is great with single leg activities on the bike, even, and swimming. And that's so important, is also with the running, is that most of your time you're actually on one leg during running. And again, just can't emphasize that enough, that taking that time, and it doesn't mean every single lift has to be 80 pounds that you're squatting or that you're, leg press, things like that. But having that throughout your routine and at some regularity is really important.
Why is that specifically for women? I forgot which one of you said that if you're 35 and above, it's extremely important to be doing the resistance. Why is that important?
Where, unfortunately, to your point, yes, women are more prone to osteoporosis and bone density issues. So making sure that you're getting that weight training in is important to prevent that progression naturally. But all of us, men and women, are naturally losing muscle mass as we age. And so the resistance training, particularly with some heavy lifting, is going to make a difference in combating that natural muscle mass loss, which does tend to lead to those injuries as we get older as well. And so tying in that weightlifting and training is important.
I had a friend that was he was into these things. He actually had a PhD in, I forgot what it was even in, just obviously a lot smarter than I am. But he actually told me that there's things that happen, like when you're squatting and doing deadlifts, that there are things happening to your body that you don't even really understand what's happening. And he was trying to explain some of it, but he said it makes all these different things in your body happen that you don't get if you're not using heavier weights and doing and forcing the recruitment of those different parts of your body.
Sounds like he earned that PhD.
Yes.
Absolutely. So taking the squat, for example, it is all those muscles. We think quads and we think glutes, right, when you do a squat, but it's everything from your tendons and your ligaments in your feet that are keeping you stable. The heavier that weight, you're having to balance and have those proprioceptive neurons kicking in to keep things stabilized, being able to move you through that movement. Your gastroc, your soleus, your hamstrings all play into that squat movement. I always love, you walk into your local gym and a lot of them have the Nautilus type of machines, and you see the images where the muscles are lit up in red. And some of them are pretty good of showing, they're going to show those main muscle groups that are impacted by those exercises. But there are so many tiny little intrinsic muscles that come into play. And those are what tend to fatigue when you're getting out and you're 10 miles into a run and all of a sudden you're getting weaker, you're getting the muscles are getting tired, then all of a sudden those little muscles are having to kick in and support. And if you're not training those and working those through those heavier lifts, they're going to give. And that's when you have an ankle sprain. That's when you have a hamstring that goes.
And the one thing, like with the heavier lifting, a lot of times people will gravitate towards the Smith machine, which it takes away some of those stabilizing muscles. So anytime that you have good enough form, I prefer lifting to be done with free weights and not within a machine, because it forces you to use many more stabilizers.
Agreed.
A lot of the workouts that I ask people to do are multi-functional, like you might be squatting with an arm raise at the same time, or squatting on one leg, or having, doing the Romanian squats. Like there are all sorts of different things you can do to really force the stabilizers. And that's part of what's really important to do, even when you're lifting heavier. You just have to make sure to keep the form. Good form is everything.
And that's what I'll say. And I think that this may be, so we don't spend our entire podcast talking about this because it is an entire podcast, but I think maybe we could I think it'd be a good idea to have Abby on again and us delve a little bit deeper into this.
Definitely.
Of what it, and especially for women, because what I usually see, it's rare that you see a female in the gym over that 35 years of age that is really incorporating the heavier weights.
You know why?
Well, tell me why.
Because most women they've never developed the basic skills for weightlifting to be able to know how to lean into a program where you're going to slowly build to where you are lifting heavy.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what you're doing, you can't just go into the gym and start lifting heavy. Like, let me just put that there right now.
Yeah.
This comes over time, lifting heavy. Like, if I'm going to start a lifting program, I'm going to have 6 to 8 weeks of gentle buildup, and then I'm going to start lifting heavy. You don't just start lifting heavy.
Yeah.
Just to put that out there.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll be, I think that's a very important thing, and we can do another one on that as we get down this road. So what's the next thing? All right, we talked about weightlifting. So what's the next thing that we would want to look at is we're into March. So what are, obviously you've been incorporating weightlifting in. That's a good thing that Abby's been doing. Now let's talk about the opposite end of that. So usually we're doing something really good, and then something is falling off the wayside. How do we determine those things?
Well, it's based on kind of what your goals are and what you're training towards. For most people, I'm just going to talk about Chattanooga 70.3. That's a half Ironman. That is not an Ironman. It's a half Ironman. I just need to set everybody straight there, because I keep having people tell me they're doing an Ironman 70.3. That's not, it might be the brand, but it's not an Ironman. That's a half Ironman. So half Ironman Chattanooga is at the end of May. So basically, we're 11, 12 weeks from that race. So now it's time to really start leaning into your training. And if you haven't been following your plan up to this point, now it's time to start following that plan, because every week it's going to be building, and you have to make space in your schedule. And I think that's part of the problem that a lot of people are facing at this time of the year, is they're coming to the reality that, whoa, I didn't leave space for 3 to 4 hours on my bike on Saturday or Sunday or Wednesday, whatever day you're going to do your long ride. It doesn't matter. It has to happen at some point, and you have to kind of get into that routine. And so, like, as I'm watching athletes develop over the last couple months, it kind of allows me to see who's ready to start training and who has got to kind of get on the program. And like, even with myself, I'm like, okay, well, there's some things, I'm kind of getting my schedule where it needs to be in some regards, and in other regards, I'm like, I'm just not where I want to be with those things. And so it just takes really stepping back and taking an honest look at it. And if you have a hard time with that, sit down with your best friend. I bet they can tell you. Like, they usually know what you're doing well and what you're not doing well, even though you might not want to hear it from them.
And during this time too, I also feel like deciding maybe, are you going to, especially in the triathlon, are you going to focus on one sport over the other? Focus on some improvements, opportunities, and that can help you get refocused in all disciplines. But I think having a focus on one and just saying, keep your foundation in your running and your biking, but then let's focus and it helps, I think, to refocus your athletes and give them something if they are struggling.
Definitely. I think sometimes too, I've had this discussion recently with people. So we're 2 months in. People who are super dedicated, like, I have one athlete right now, and just something's not right. Something's not right. We don't know what it is, but he's going to take a couple weeks off. Completely off. No, nothing. Rest, resetting. And, I was really proud of him because he kind of played it off at first, but then ultimately it's about him trusting what he's feeling. He is a great athlete. He knows that something isn't right. And I think so often we forget to trust ourselves when something's not right. We keep pushing through because as athletes, that's what we do. But that's not always the right thing to do for long-term performance gains. And so taking 2 weeks off now will probably save his season because he's trusting his gut instinct. And so I'm really proud of him for doing that. And I think anybody who has the courage to be like, what? I just need a break. And it's okay. Take the break. If you have a coach, just talk to your coach. It is okay to take a break. It's okay to take a week off. It's okay to take 2 weeks off. Do it.
And I think you raised a great point in that communication piece. And I think that's where, as an athlete being coached, in the last 10 years, but really for the first time in my life of truly having a coach outside of organized sports, it is that idea of communicating and saying, and a lot of times it's realizing that my run's not where it needs to be. I'm not feeling it. Why is it? And is it work? Is it something mental? Is it so, and I think recognizing that it could just be a mental battle you're having, and it has nothing to do with your running capability, but yet, being able to communicate that and saying, I'm just not seeing the results I want to see, and talking to your coach about that is something I've learned from you, Katie, is the value in that, and being able to talk it through and make that decision and feel good about it and know you'll get me back on track.
Thank you. I really think there's a lot to be said, though, for the communication. Along those lines, Kevin brought up something yesterday just in casual conversation that I thought was really worth talking about on the podcast. He kind of brought a different mindset to his workout. And by doing so, he ended up having a much better quality workout than he would have if he just went through the motions of the workout. Now, I realize this isn't possible every day, but sometimes by getting your mind right before you go and do a workout, you create a totally different environment. So what happened here, Kevin? Tell us about it.
Well, obviously the Ironman is number one on my list of physical life goals. And number two, right behind that, is I want to do the Boston Marathon. So I've done a lot of marathons, and the marathon distance is not a distance that I have not been able to. Just done a lot of marathons, but the Boston Marathon is one that is particularly that I want to do. You could go buy your way into it right now. You can, hey, X amount of dollars, you can do it. Do a charity slot. But I want to qualify, and I've always said, well, there's just no way I'm gonna qualify. It's 3:30 marathon for my age group. I'm no way I'm gonna do that. And I just started thinking, I was like, if this is something that's really important to you, and obviously the Ironman this year is my A goal, but looking into the future, even over the next few years, is like, well, if that's something that you really want to do, then go out here. And I had an interval workout yesterday. I was like, go out here and kick butt in those intervals. When you hit your interval, really push yourself. Push yourself harder than you would normally push yourself. Because if that's what you're saying you want to do, then do that. And I did. And now, was it blatant? Everything's relative. But for me, I felt really good in those intervals, really strong in those intervals, really. And it was, okay, this is a brick that you're laying towards hopefully getting to that point you want to be able to really, okay, I'm going into this, whatever marathon I'm going to be running, and this is the time that I'm going to try to lay down to be able to reach that goal of qualifying for the Boston Marathon. And so that mindset shift of, okay, no, this is what you're saying you want to do, and going into that workout with a purpose of and I think that's important. And that's what I think we get lost a lot of times in the mundaneness, I would say, of a training plan, is every single thing you do, including recovery, including strength training, including yoga, including easy runs, including everything you do, has a purpose. And be on purpose when you lace up your shoes, when you put on your wetsuit, no matter what you're doing, be on purpose about it. And that's something that it just struck me yesterday in what I'm trying to do to be able to do that. And it made a difference.
But it always makes a difference. And, think about if you do that 3 times a week, if you bring that mindset, and then you do that for like a month, and then you do that for 2 months, all of a sudden you've changed how you're running.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard to bring your best self to every workout, almost impossible. But I know for me, when I show up, especially if I'm doing a workout with somebody else, I need to be fully present. I am there to do a workout. I'm there to perform my best, to push the effort. And like when I swim with my swim partner, I better bring it every week. And I expect him to do the same. And so it's like it changes how you do your workouts when you come with the right mentality, because I'm like, I'm not going to show up and waste somebody's time not working hard. But where is that mindset when we're by ourselves? I don't have time to waste. Like my own time is valuable even if I'm running by myself. So I need to make that count. It's not just some empty run, unless it's supposed to just be an easy run where I'm relaxed, which those are important too, but not all the time.
That's right.
So I do think that where your mind is, getting your head on straight, it's only the beginning of March. Get your head on straight, reset your thinking. And, Abby, you're over there shaking your head. So, I mean, shaking your head in a positive way, but what? Because you're thinking how this applies to yourself.
I absolutely. And I think what Kevin just shared is it's hard, right? It is hard to show up and make that effort. It's preparation. And I think what I'm shaking my head about is the tools and the resources we have to make sure that we're prepared for those workouts. I think Katie makes that easier for us. Our devices, Garmin's, Apple Watches, whatever it is you use, make it easy. But getting back to your workout, preparing for the day, because how easy it is to jump in the water and do a pool workout, and halfway through it, you're thinking about what are you cooking for dinner, or what was your, that meeting you had earlier in the day and what you've got to do when you get home. It is, right? So preparing for that workout, putting it in your watch so your intervals are there in your watch and you get the ding that reminds you, light poles, whatever it is, but having those triggers. And I think, again, that's, I'm making this all about Katie, aren't I? But having that coach that puts that workout in there and helps you do it is half the battle. But then to your point, having the mindset and what you did to be thinking about it. And I laugh too mentally because I'm better about it race day, about mantras and what I'm saying to myself in the middle of a workout and where I'm focused. You go into a race a little different than you do your everyday work, and that's got to change.
You've got to practice that race day mentality.
Exactly.
Like every workout is an opportunity to practice that mentality, and the more you practice it, the better you get at it. So that way, when you show up on race day, that mentality is there and ready to go to work. Yeah. And I think a lot of people expect that. Like you've had a lot more practice with it over the years.
Yeah.
And you've raced with me and you have me in your head going, we're not thinking like that. This is what we're going to do. But I think for people who have not practiced that, that's what workouts are for, is practicing this. Now, sure, you can listen to a podcast sometimes, listen to music, but there is a lot of time when if you're really training for something where you need to be quiet and you need to be focused on what you're doing. You need to be focused on your form. You need to be focused on your breathing. You need to be focused on keeping your mind quiet and in the moment. And so often, like, we just live in this world of constant distraction. We're like, just get through the workout. I just got to check the workout off. Gosh, if you're going to do that, I mean, maybe just skip it.
Let me tell you about a mentality and a little bitty baby goal.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm the most competitive person in the world. Actually, I'm married to the most competitive person in the world. So I'm the second most competitive person in the world.
Okay.
When I have a reason to be competitive. Abby, you don't know, but we've talked about it on the podcast before. I ran my first 5K in January.
Perhaps.
So I came back from that with a goal of sub 40. I want to be under 40 minutes in
All
the
right.
5K. So to do that, February 1st, I ran my first all-out mile. It was 13:48.
Okay.
So I set a goal of March 1st, 13:30.
Okay.
And 13:30 is the only thing that's on my mind when I tie my shoes.
Good.
It is 13:30. I'm not there, but I'm close. And I'm not going to run with heels. I'm going to go somewhere flat on March 1st and see what I can do. But the only that 13:48, as long as it's not 13:48 again, I know I'm making progress.
Yeah,
and that
right.
30 is all I want.
But you're holding yourself accountable.
Trying to, yeah.
And you're staying focused
Yeah.
on one thing instead of like a million other things.
Right.
It's one thing. And every time you go out there, that's your focus.
Well, and my focus has shifted a little bit to I don't care how busy I am right now. I got 15 minutes to do this.
You do.
I can take this 15 minutes and do
Sure.
this. So.
Exactly. But it's that mentality shift. And I think that you make a really good point. It doesn't matter like how you're training, what you're training for. It's what you're focused on
Right.
when you're training and getting your mind wrapped around it. And I just think for everybody, no matter where they are in their training year, their training plan, or even if they're just getting started, you can't go wrong getting your mind right. So that's just one of the biggest things I'm seeing right now. Anything else on that topic?
No, I think it all starts there.
It really does.
It all starts there.
But I think now going forward, you know where you are. You've kind of taken inventory mentally, strength training. Don't just go start lifting heavy. Get help. If ask a friend, ask a coach, we have so many coaches. Oh my gosh. Personal trainers, they're everywhere. There are people there to help you. Before you go buy a new pair of shoes, like go spend some money on some good advice. It's out there. It's available. And I don't understand why people like fight it so much to get help. Like, I know when I've reached out to like my mentors or coaches that I've used in the past that I really worked well with. And not every coach you're going to jive with, and not every personal trainer is for you, and that's okay. But you find those people by, constantly searching or asking your friends, who've gotten good results. Right now, like I'm kind of interested in all the macros and like learning more about the nutrition side of it, but on a higher level. So, I'm going to have to look for a mentor for that because I don't have somebody right now. But it's like I always want to be curious and I always want to be constantly learning. And so when I see things that interest me, then I'm going to kind of start watching, okay, who am I going to reach out to? How am I going to find this help? And start reading about it, start learning about it so I can ask intelligent questions because I don't want to waste somebody's time. So I think, to the final bit of this is, what are you curious about? What do you want to be better at? What are you doing to learn about it? Do you have mentors? Do you have people you can follow? Do you have people you can reach out to? Because it's just an integral part of life, not just with training, but with anything, about enhancing your life and learning and being better than you were yesterday.
That's right.
Whether it's with your training program or not, even though that's what we originally started talking about today. But really, that's everything I have on this subject. I wanted to touch base with everybody on where they are training wise and what you're doing to keep yourself on track. Because we really haven't talked that much about it lately, because I don't want to talk about triathlon and talk about coaching all the time. But at the same point, it's important, because that's kind of how this podcast began, to be about training and, what you're doing in sport. So, Kevin, I know you've got a lot on your plate, but you also have a half Ironman coming up in May, as do I. So, it's time to really get serious and dial in the training now.
It is. Make every day count. And, there's going to be days when you're sick. There's going to be days when you have to legitimately miss. And don't kill yourself for those. But it's those others where there really is no excuse. Don't miss those. Because when the sickness comes and the other things come that are legitimate life events that cause you to miss a day of training, don't, take those days.
Yep.
But the days where you don't have those legitimate reasons, then just make it happen and be on purpose with it. And if you're on purpose and doing what it takes, perfect thing. And we will bring Abby back, and we will do one specifically on strength training and to really talk about how to implement a strength training plan and what that means for women, for men, and for others, why that's important. But we close the podcast like this every week, and I think it's really important now when you look, we're 12 weeks, probably 10 weeks when you hear this podcast from Ironman Chattanooga, the half, very, very important. And in life, we are talking about training, but in life, listen to these words. Do the hard things today, and tomorrow will take care of itself.